Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I want to talk about the Davos Summit, the World Economic Forum Summit, which until recently was very, very important. Well, it still is, since many of the global leaders have gone to Davos. The only person who's prominently missing is Prime Minister Modi, who used to go to Davos, and there was a big deal made about it. Xi Jinping these days does not travel much, and Putin obviously was not invited. But nevertheless, Trump is there. Mark Carney made a big impact. The Canadian Prime Minister, and of course Macron, the French president, was there. But what I want to really talk about today is the amazing display of hypocrisy by Western leaders in Davos. Mark Carney's speech is being hailed as something phenomenal. He's talked about how there is a rupture in the international system. He exposed the hypocrisy and duplicity of the so-called rule-based order, and he was making fun and being very critical. Well, not making so much fun, but being scathingly critical about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump has done to the global order. And then Macron also came and basically called Donald Trump as a hypocrite, a bully. So just let's look at a couple of these two speeches before I give you my take on why I think this is I felt like throwing up, honestly, after listening to Carney. And a lot of people seem to be praising it, as especially people who are critical of Donald Trump. Look, Donald Trump is perhaps one of the worst presidents that the United States has ever had, and easily the worst global leader, undoubtedly. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the jokers are heroes, because they have been put in a position where they have but no choice to scream and cry and protest, and that's what they're doing now in Davos. So let me just run through the speeches a little bit, and then I will give my own critique of these Western hypocrites. Let me first add this.
Brutality. We have a place.
This is Macron. He's wearing those glasses, not because he's trying to channel Joe Biden, but because apparently one of his eyes was bleeding.
But we do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer science to plotism. And we do prefer rule of law to brutality. We have a place where rule of law and predictability is still the rule of the game. And my guess is that it is largely underpriced by the market. Having a place like Europe, which sometimes is too slow, for sure, and needs to be reformed, for sure, but which is predictable, loyal, and where you know that the rule of the game is just the rule of law, it's a good place. And here in the epicenter of this continent, we do believe that we need more growth, we need more stability in this world. But we do prefer respect to bullies, we do prefer science to plotism, and we do prefer rule of law to brutality.
So he's saying we believe in stability, we believe in rule of law, we prefer some kind of certainty. Europe has been a great place. Europe has been loyal. And loyal to whom? To the United States. That's what he's trying to say. And so he's kind of, essentially, this is all about Greenland, really. Now that Donald Trump wants to take Greenland by force, Europe is protesting and screaming, etc. But this same Europe has no problem with the genocide in Gaza, with what Europeans, European countries that have armed Israel consistently and supported a mass. There has been no bigger crime against humanity in the 21st century than what has happened in Gaza. Close to 50,000 plus women and children have been killed, massacred by bombs, a country massacring children and women. If that doesn't awaken humanity in you, then you are not a human being. And these European countries not only justified it, supported it. Canada supplied weapons, UK supplied weapons, UK provided air cover, air intelligence, surveillance, thousands of flights by the Royal Air Force. The Germans continue to sell weapons. At least Canada has stopped now. But the Germans continue. Not only that, look at Iran. When Donald Trump bombed Iran, where was the rule-based order? Did we see any protests from Macron or from Carney and others? In fact, on Iran, they are very much with the United States. Look at what happened in Iraq. Where was Europe when when George W. Bush invaded Iraq on a false pretext? Where was Europe and where was Canada when Donald Trump went into other parts of the world, like Venezuela? Where are they? Where is their condemnation? Where are their sanctions? So these guys were hypocritical. They were willing to go along with the United States as long as they continue to benefit from it. And now that they are the victims and targets of the United States, which has gone completely berserk, amok, does not respect. Donald Trump has no respect for international law, or for that matter, for US Constitution or domestic law. And now suddenly they are screaming because they are at the receiving end. This whole, oh, we believe in the rule of law, oh, we believe in this and that, is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, they did not believe in any of these things. Listen to Carney's speech, which is supposed to be a great speech, and it would have been if Carney's country had some credibility. Trudeau was selling weapons to Israel during the genocide, and when he announced he would not send it, he smuggled them through the United States. They are continuing to expand NATO. If these people believed in rule of law, why do they need an institution that is intimidating the rest of the world? The United States has been imposing sanctions on countries left, right, and center. Where were they? The United States has imposed sanctions on India, and India alone when it comes to buying Russian oil. But there are other Europeans are buying Russian oil. China is buying Russian oil. Turkey is buying Russian oil, a NATO partner of the United States and Europe. They were okay with it. They did not scream about the hypocrisy and double standards of the global order or the rule-based order. I mean, how could there be a rule-based order? Biden continued to talk about it while he was selling weapons, and his intelligence was reporting that only women and children are dying. Starving people to death. This is what these set of countries supported. And now they're talking about rule of law. But let's listen to him.
That the strongest would exempt themselves when we knew the story.
It's very well written and very well delivered, but the hypocrisy is stunning.
The story of the international rules-based order was partially false. That the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient. That trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim.
Yeah, but
this fiction.
Yeah, but where were you when the international law was being applied to Sudan but not to Israel? Where were you when international law was being applied to Iran but not to the US?
Was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
You know, he's now cribbing about the fact that both China and the United States are using their economic power to bully them, which they are doing. China is using supply chains, its control of rare earth minerals, etc., supply chain of solar cells, etc., to bully the Europeans. They are so afraid of, the Europeans are so afraid of Chinese EVs. Now Carney is opening back. He's going to allow 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles back in Canada because he lost the US. But when US was with Canada, he was okay with all the measures that Donald Trump was taking against all other countries except Canada's. So it's pretty rich. I mean, I understand that he's now complaining about it in quite an eloquent fashion, but I'm sure even he wanted to throw up when he saw the first draft of his own speech.
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false.
So this is what is the crux of it. He says, we knew that the story about the rule-based order was partially false. But where were you? When did you know? And why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you stand up for principle when you realized that the rule-based order was essentially being used to essentially establish and sustain American hegemony, of which I think the biggest benefactor has been the Europe. Europe, Canada, all NATO countries have benefited from the double standards that the US has repeatedly implemented worldwide. There is absolutely no doubt. You know, when the US walked out of JCPOA and then bombed Iran, that was a violation of international law. Okay? Where was Canada? What did it have to say? They stood with the US, these countries. So to me, it is quite rich. It's quite amusing to see what is happening to them, how desperate they are getting to maintain the quality of life that their citizens had got used to because of the double standards of the global order, which had existed because of the extreme power that the United States enjoyed both militarily as well as economically worldwide. But now he's complaining. I mean, I think Donald Trump should take Greenland by force. What are they going to do? Canada has threatened to fight. Really? They're going to fight the United States? I find it hilarious. None of these, all of them can combine and they won't be able to stand up to the US for a week. This is not Russia we are talking about. This is the United States of America. I would love to see Donald Trump go in and take Greenland and also maybe take Canada. The only reason why the Republicans will not take Canada is because the Canada is more or less to the left of the United States. So if we get 30 million Canadians in the United States, the Republicans will never win an election in the US. And there'll be too much of snow and ice. Half of Canada is just under ice. Someday all its minerals will be available to the world. But to me, this is absolutely funny listening to this. This is what I've been saying in graduate seminars from 25 years ago. And the professors said, oh, you're being biased, this third world perspective. That is how I was critiqued in. And I have been critical of these so-called double standards of the global order in all my academic work for decades. And now, suddenly, Donald Trump threatens to take Greenland by force, and they suddenly discover the hypocrisy of the international order. But as long as Europe was benefiting, as long as North America was benefiting from it disproportionately, they were happy with it.
That the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes.
So he's saying that American hegemony was beneficial because it provided certain benefits to the rest of the world. Public good, by definition, is something, if it's like saying that if I were to purify the air in Delhi, and I'm coming to you now from Delhi, so if Delhi's air is purified, everybody will benefit from it, rich or poor, whether you've paid taxes or not. So public good is something that is, if it's available to somebody, it's available to all. But the benefits of American hegemony were not available to all people. It was not a public good. It was beneficial only to those countries which were allied with the United States. And those countries which did not toe the line did not benefit from all the public, the so-called public goods that the United States was able to provide. Look at globalization. Look at Africa. Has Africa really benefited from globalization? No. They're complaining about it now because India and China have benefited from globalization, and some other Asian countries in ASEAN. But because he benefited it, he's calling it public good. See, the hypocrisy is even in his critique, even his critique of the hypocritical system of double standards, he's being hypocritical, calling it a public good.
So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works.
It no longer works for Canada. It no longer works for the West. And that is the problem. But if Donald Trump had done whatever he's doing without hurting Canada and Europe, they would have been okay with it. They would have been okay. None of these people objected to Donald Trump's double standards when he imposed tariffs on India, but did not impose on China, or did not impose on Turkey or on Europe, which were all buying oil from Russia. They continue to buy stuff from Russia, even the United States, even though it's just a few $100 million, but the US continues to buy some nuclear-related stuff from Russia. So the imports from Russia are not zero at the moment, even in the US. So this whole talk, like for example, when Donald Trump said he's going to impose 25% additional tariffs on countries that are trading with Iran, Carney had no problem. And neither did Macron. He didn't say, oh, let's not bully Iran. Let's not bully the countries that are trading with Iran. The countries that trade with Iran are basically United Arab Emirates, Turkey, India, and China. They were okay with it. Rule-based order, they liked it, Western values, and so on and so forth. But now when he turns around and says, I'm going to impose 10% tariffs on countries that are supporting Greenland to remain with Denmark, and suddenly now they think it's bullying, and they think it is double standards. So what Donald Trump is doing is really mind-boggling. Okay, if I look at it from an international relations perspective as a scholar, it is just to me astounding as to how the world's #1 power, which built the international order, the global order, and benefited from it and continues to benefit from it. Yes, China and India are benefiting from globalization, but so has the US. Yes, so has the US. About 15 years ago, in 2012, around that time, Europe and the US were on equal level when it came to global the GDP. They were both around 10, 12 trillion dollars. And now, 15 years later, Europe is 20 and America is 31. America has become 1.5 times bigger than Europe. So it's very clear that the US is gaining significantly from the global order. We talk about China. Look, in the last 5 years, from 2020 to 2025, China's GDP has gone from 14 to 20 trillion dollars. It has gained $6 trillion in 5 years. So it's adding about $1.2 trillion every year. But the US went from 21 to 31. In 5 years, the US has added $10 trillion to its economy, growing at $2 trillion per year in the last 5 years. India went from 2.8 to 4.2. It's nothing, even though we call it the fastest growing economy. Its base is so small that it has added in the last 5 years only about $1.5 trillion. The US has grown 10 times. And he thinks that the US has not benefited from this global order? They have. The US has. So has the West. Europe is today $20 trillion. It's a very prosperous part of the world. It is one of the richer parts of the world compared to Africa, compared to even the so-called dynamic ASEAN countries. The per capita income of most ASEAN countries varies between like around 10,000 to 20,000. Japan is just $35,000 per capita. European countries all are in that range. Germany, Japan, Britain, France, these are all much richer than Japan. And of course, far richer than Indonesia or Malaysia or Vietnam or so-called rising powers in Asia. So they have all benefited from this and they have enjoyed it. They are now panicking because Donald Trump is about to change the whole thing, and they realize that in his foolishness to, or rather selfishness, to just let America benefit and not Europeans, he's basically abandoning Europe. So this is one way in which the Western countries, Europe and Canada, are screaming about abandonment. That, oh my God, America is abandoning us, and now we will have to do everything on our own and pay for it ourselves. So while people, so when you hear all this wonderful appreciation of Mark Carney's speech in Davos, or people appreciating Macron because he just called Donald Trump a bully, remember this: you don't have to be pro-Trump to point out that these jokers are hypocritical. That if Trump was not targeting them, if he was not targeting Greenland, if he was just targeting Venezuela, and after Venezuela, if he had moved to some other BRIC country like Brazil or gone after Cuba, they would have been okay with it. They would have been okay with it. One of the most profoundest aspects of Western culture is its hypocrisy. Yes, there are wonderful aspects of it. Freedom of thought was great. It's still more democratic than many parts of the world, but it is also hypocritical, and let's not forget that. So that's what I wanted to share today. I will be on other shows and other channels today talking about Donald Trump's speech. I just listened to a part of it, and he's talking as if he's giving a State of the Union address. I think by mistake, someone gave him the State of the Union address speech rather than the speech that he was supposed to give at Davos. But anyway, we will talk about it maybe tomorrow, or if you're watching some other channels that I frequent, you can catch me talking about Davos and that speech tonight. So, but anyway, thank you for watching Conversations. I really enjoy your support. I'm coming to you today from India's capital, Delhi. And my loving wife has bought me a portable air purifier. So I will be reporting to you about the environmental situation in Delhi too. Apparently the air quality is terrible. I'm at the moment just in my hotel room, so I will talk to you guys about it tomorrow or day after tomorrow after I have actually witnessed this firsthand. But thank you for watching Conversations. Please subscribe to the channel. Try and become a member if you want to support the channel. And if there are any interesting questions or comments, I will take them now. And Sandeep, I will come back tomorrow morning and do this whole thing in Hindi after Donald Trump's speech is over. Definitely tomorrow morning. So try and catch me India time around 10 o'clock tomorrow, or even before that, 9 a.m. Arun Kumar Singh, thank you very much. I want to see if there are any. So there aren't many comments. There's one here. Although I applaud Carney for his profoundity, I do agree with your trenchant critique of the Davos show and the innate hypocrisy. Thank you very much. So that's good. One more message to Sandeep. Sandeep, I will be on Satya Hindi at 9 o'clock talking about these things in Hindi, obviously. So you're welcome to come to Satya Hindi at 9 p.m., which is just 16 minutes away from now. So take care. Bye.